Welcome back, Warriors. I am your CO, Major Doodleman149, and welcome to my second official briefing for Battlefield 6, the long-awaited sequel to the disaster that was Battlefield 2042. Recruits, today I'm here to give you my thoughts on the second week of the preliminary battles of this conflict, dubbed Operation Open Beta by the brass. We were deployed to 4 different fronts over the weekend, and were given a variety of objectives to complete. 3 of the fronts were the same as last weekend, but this time we had to do battle in New York City as well. The objectives we were tasked with were the same as the previous week as well. But how was the experience for us boots on the ground? Let me give you my unfiltered and unbiased takes on the current conflict, ladies and gents. From last time, the classes remain largely the same, and my points from my previous briefing still stand. There is, however, something else I'd like to touch on in this segment. This is the discrepancy between the time to kill and the time to die in this conflict. It must be an issue with the feed coming through from the HUDs of the soldiers on the ground, but from what I've witnessed, it seems enemies take quite the pounding from small arms fire before going down, while friendlies seem to drop like flies in half a second. In other words, it feels like it takes longer to kill an enemy than it does for an enemy to kill you. Hopefully, this can be ironed out by the brass before this conflict kicks off in earnest, because there are times where it just feels like shit. On a smaller side note, there seems to be some regions of the battlefield that people have been able to unfairly gain access to during a conflict. Some might even call these areas out of bounds. The fact that these areas are accessible is something that DICE up at HQ severely needs to address. Before we move on though, let's have a word from HQ.
But before we get into this video is sponsored by myself. That's right, in case you guys didn't know, which, let's be fair, none of you do, I have my very own merch shop over on Spreadshirt. I've got a few designs based on some stuff that I frequently say in my videos and just some other designs that I like. My personal favorite, which I'm actually wearing right now, is the True Doodle Fan shirt. The shirts are high quality, soft, and unbelievably comfortable. So if you feel like getting some good clothes and supporting your favorite small YouTuber, then why not head over there and snag something nice for yourself? You deserve it. The link is in the description.
Looking at the gunplay, it is just as solid as the week before from a technical perspective. There are, however, some things I need to mention here. First of all, the defibrillators seem to have the most inconsistent range I have experienced in a while. Sometimes I can revive a downed ally from what looks to be too far away, while other times I literally need to attach the paddles to their ass cheeks to jolt them back to life. This hit detection needs to be corrected. Now, this next point isn't strictly gunplay related, but it has to do with gunsmithing back with the quartermaster. Last time I mentioned this was the best job the HQ has ever done with this system, and that still stands. However, the more I delved into it and the more I talked to the quartermaster, the more we realized that every weapon basically has the same progression of attachments. Unlike the conflict from 2019, there is not much room for experimentation here or for coming up with unique builds. Generally, with a few exceptions, the earned attachment is just a better version of what came before it. Most foregrips boil down to the angled foregrip being the best on every single weapon. This is typically the same for barrels, muzzle options, and ammo types. As I stated, there is some deviation from this formula, but it is far too formulaic to be very engaging. It almost fell back into the same rut we were in with the 2042 conflict. While it's nice to look at, the gunsmithing does appear to be mostly skin deep. My thoughts on the vehicles provided in this conflict remain largely the same from last week. However, something I failed to mention, which I really truly do appreciate as a change from the 2042 conflict, is that now, again, it matters where you land a hit on an enemy tank in regards to how much damage you do to it. Rear shots now do significantly more damage than front or side shots, as it should be. Balance has remained fairly consistent between the 2 weekends. I hadn't seen any weapon really dominate every engagement, and that was certainly a breath of fresh air given the environment we frequently find ourselves fighting in. However, as with last weekend, the assault shotgun is simply too strong. Now on to the maps. My position still stands that the old fronts we fought on last weekend, Gibraltar is the best, Liberation Peak is second, and Cairo is last. And if I am being truly honest, Empire State, the battlefield set in New York City, sits below Liberation Peak for me. The infantry-only style is fine, and verticality does add more interest to the front than the likes of Locker or Metro, but it still doesn't fully capture the feeling of these conflicts like it has in the past. Whether that comes from new recruits not playing their classes that well, or the admittedly underwhelming destruction despite this front being featured in the promotional material for this conflict, Empire State simply falls short for me. As it sits, none of these maps really feel great, but I can appreciate them for what they are. Visual fidelity in our HUDs remains exceptionally high, and the issue of the killer silhouette remains from last week. I truly hope the brass has some creative fix for that in store, because as it sits, it is very annoying to look at. Another thing that could be enhanced in our HUDs is the kill indicator. There is little visual or audio indication that an enemy was terminated at a distance, which, in a chaotic gunfight, could be really helpful to know that my former target is no longer a threat. My final note will be commenting on the decisions made by the brass behind the scenes. My position from the last briefing still stands in that the fronts we played on felt better on a smaller scale, potentially catering to the Call of Duty battalion yet again. Empire State is no different than the other fronts in this regard, aside from the larger Conquest operations also feeling as though they are more catered towards that battalion as well. And so that is all, Warriors. Those are my thoughts on the initial breakdown of the second week of Operation Open Beta. Soldiers and gunplay remain largely the same, although the veneer of gunsmithing has started to wear, and we aren't even out of the beta yet. Vehicles and balance remain solid as they were last weekend. Empire State is another middling front to fight over, this time with 0 vehicles involved. It lacks quality destruction, but it does have some enjoyable verticality to it. The conflict's continued shift towards smaller scale battles like Domination over large-scale Conquest operations suggest an attempt to appeal to a broader recruitment pool, potentially alienating dedicated troops. And so, Recruit, what do you think of my assessment? Was this briefing worth listening to, or do you respectfully disagree with your commanding officer? Permission to speak freely is granted. I do hope this briefing was worth your while. Before I depart, however, I would like to recognize Zane Tor as the lone soldier on the Patreon squad. His continued support is greatly appreciated, and hopefully he continues to see a return on his investment. Feel free to join him or support me through the requisition of an amazing piece of Doodleman merchandise. I've been your CO, Major Doodleman149, and until next time, recruits, I will see you on the battlefield. You are dismissed.
Now, please enjoy some of my clips from the second week of the open beta.